Yes, yes, yes. Here we are. We are back in session. Like I said, look to your left, look to your right. If your table mate is not present and you know that they are here, please ask them to come into the room. We're about to get started with our next dynamic speaker. I'm going to ask that you please pay attention to the stage. If you can hear me, clap your hands once. If you can hear me, clap your hands 2 times. If you can hear me, clap your hands thrice. And that's supposed to mean stop talking, y'all. It's not working. I think it's because I'm not a teacher. Do you have to be a teacher for that to work? Maybe so. Or how can I go? I go. No, y'all don't know that one? I go, and you say, I may. I go. I go. And that means, can I have your attention? And I think it's Swahili, but don't quote me because I can't remember. Anyway, that's another way of doing it. That does normally work a little bit better for me, as it just did. I hope that you all, Samantha's laughing at me. I hope that you all enjoyed your breakout sessions. I will say that I was a little nervous about mine coming on the plane the other day, but I feel good. I think we had a really good conversation. And would you say? I am here, yeah. I think we had a really robust and good conversation about advocacy. I hope that the fatherhood panel and all of the other sessions were good. That said, we are not finished. We are not finished. Don't forget to do your CEU stuff if you haven't done it. There will be CEUs for this session as well. This has been a really, really powerful day. And to close out our powerful conversation, I am honored to bring to the stage Dr. Selena Webster-Bass. Dr. Bass is a Jacksonville native with more than 25 years of experience in health equity, community health, and authentic community engagement. She is a nationally recognized health equity advocate. She's held many, many leadership roles with the University of Florida, Jacksonville Medical Center, so on and so forth. It's a lot. She told me don't read her whole bio. I really want to read it, but she won't let me. You can read it in your programs. In 2016, Dr. Webster-Bass launched Voices Institute, a training, consulting, and research group focused on advancing health equity and promoting well-being in vulnerable communities. She has worked with systems partners to develop national multicultural disease education campaigns and facilitate trainings in a variety of topics, including health equity, systems change, maternal child health, and more. Currently, her Voices Institute promotes mental health well-being with youth and families. It leads hope and healing circles in vulnerable communities and promotes maternal well-being and infant mortality reduction with families. So please join me in welcoming to the stage Dr. Bass.
All right, good afternoon. Give yourselves a pat on the back because you stayed to the end. All right. Let's show some love to Broward Healthy Start Coalition for this amazing gathering and creating this intersection of advocacy, of collective knowledge, and promotion of maternal child well-being and fatherhood. We can't leave that out. I am delighted to be here. I'm excited to be here. I am Dr. Webster-Bass, and I am a health equity and public health advocate. I am a mother of 4 children, 3 children that are with me on this side, and I have 1 son that transitioned due to sickle cell complications. So this topic is dear to my heart, and I am just blessed to be able to share with you today. I have a really interdisciplinary background. I have a degree in biology, public health, and divinity. So you're going to hear those elements in our discussion today. To heal is to touch with love that which was previously touched by fear. I want to say that one more time. To heal is to touch with love that which was previously touched by fear. Women, and particularly women of color, fathers, our families, fear being invisible to providers and systems. They fear that their symptoms may be minimized. Providers telling them, oh, it's all in your head. They fear loss of insurance. They fear not being enough. But we know that crisis is opportunity. We, as community healers, we have the power to demonstrate love, to uplift compassion, and to promote dignity. Do you agree? I'm from the church, so I need a call and response. Do you agree? Amen and ashe. So I want to invite you to journey with me in understanding healing-centered organizations. And as we journey, I like to create what I call gracious space. Many of you may know this as safe space. So one of our first guidelines for gracious space is to honor every person that's in our room, in the room. Every person, regardless of their background, their zip code, their color, their ethnicity, their religion, their spirituality or non-spirituality, we honor each other. Can you turn to the person next to you and say, I honor you? All right, I love it, I love it, I love it. Yes. And our second guideline is the Vegas rule. And what's the Vegas rule? What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. And so we'll have a little opportunity to share, to do a turn and talk. So we want to make sure that we keep what we share, our lived experiences and journeys, we want to keep that in the room. But this says the alternative Vegas rule. So what do you think that means? Anybody? Right, so we want learning to leave the room. This conference is not a checkbox, right? We've learned so much today. We've gained so much today. We've learned about evidence-informed strategies. We've learned about evidence-based strategies. We've learned a whole lot. And so it's important that we take what we've learned today and apply it with our families and with our mothers and our fathers and in our communities, in our organizations and systems. And then our last guideline is to look for aha moments. What do we mean by aha moment? Any volunteers? Aha moment. An aha moment is a moment of realization. It is a shift from the way that we perceive ourselves and even the way that we may see our families. You know how we make little comments, oh, she from the hood, she from public housing, right? So maybe we'll have some aha moments and confront some of the biases and some of the assumptions and beliefs that we may have about families that we serve. If we're a data analyst, we may even consider the way that we analyze our data. Maybe rather than just sharing the numbers, the quantitative components of our data, we focus on the stories and the narratives and the lived experiences behind that data. So do we have consensus for gracious space? Yes. All right, awesome. We're off to a great start. So this morning, we started with some affirmations. I am here. Wasn't that powerful? Well, we're going to end with affirmations as well. Right? So I'd like for you to stand up, because I know it's the end of the day. Oh, no. I'd like for you to raise your hands. Turn the palms of your hands towards your face. You're going to cross over, lock your thumbs, and what have you formed? You formed a butterfly. I'd like for you to flutter that butterfly towards your heart. And I'd like for you to just close your eyes for a moment and continue to flutter towards your heart. I'd like for you to take in some deep breaths. Release. And I'd like for you to repeat after me as you flutter. I am healing with every breath. I am healing, giving, and thriving every day. I embrace peace. I release what no longer serves me. I embrace joy. I embrace self-compassion. I embrace love. I embrace change. I embrace healing. I want you to let that settle. All right, thank you. You may be seated. Thank you for taking the time for the pause, for the reflective inquiry. That's important that we do that on an ongoing basis. Healing looks different for each of us. I experience healing when I'm in the presence of God, when I am in a secret place. I also experience healing when I'm in the presence of my 94-year-old grandmother, when I sit at her feet and I glean all of her wisdom and intergenerational knowledge to help me make it with raising 3 kids, 19, 21, and 26. And so healing is not a destination, it is a process, and it looks different for each of us. It's not a technical change, but like the butterfly, it is transformational. And in order for us to experience healing-centered organizations, it requires a shift in our culture. It must be comprehensive, long-term, it requires significant effort, and it must be sustained. Do you agree? So these are our goals for the time that I have left with you. One, we're going to distinguish between trauma-informed and healing-centered approaches. We'll also talk about psychological safety principles in creating culturally responsive organizations. And then I'll give you some examples of work that we're doing in Northeast Florida. I'm based in Jacksonville, Florida, with the Northeast Florida Healthy Start Coalition, some examples of communal resilience. So when we think about trauma-informed care, we're not saying there's anything wrong with trauma-informed care, because all of us have been trained in it, right? But what we're saying is that it is a starting point in moving towards healing and restoration. These are the 6 principles of trauma-informed care. I'm sure many of you are familiar with them, but I just want to touch on them very quickly. Safety and trustworthiness and transparency is really about creating spaces where people feel emotionally, physically, and mentally safe. So when individuals come into your organization, do you just throw a bunch of forms for them to fill out? Or are you explaining to them what those forms are all about, why it's important to collect this information? Are you even reading and reviewing the information before the patient, the family gets there to understand their social and cultural context? Are you making sure that there's informed consent before procedures, right? So all of these things are examples of things that we do to build trust and transparency and safety in our organizations. Are we focused on peer support? Are we leveraging the lived experience of those who have walked the walk and talked the talk, right? Those who have lived experiences like community health workers and doulas and other folks who understand systems navigation. Are we leveraging those resources in our meetings, in our wraparound meetings, in our sessions with our families? Are we collaborating authentically with community? Before I started my organization, Voices Institute, I worked for an agency where community was about getting letters of support when it was time for a grant. And then when the grant was funded, there was no sharing of the resources with the community, right? Particularly community-based, ethnic-based, community-based organizations. And so when we talk about collaboration, it's not just always collaboration in name, but collaboration in deed, right? With intensity and with intentionality. So collaboration is really important in terms of trauma-informed care. I like to say nothing about us without us. It's important that the community is at the table and assisting in developing our programs and also helping us with our continuous quality improvement processes. Empowerment, voice, and choice. I'll give an example of this one. I lead Hope and Healing Circles in Jacksonville in our urban core. And one of the goals for that community is to reduce the number of children that are removed from homes. And so what the leaders of our family support services said is, oh, we're going to do culturally responsive parenting education. And my first question as the consultant was, have you had a conversation with the community? Have you conducted a focus group to really understand what are the barriers, what are the challenges, what is the trauma that some of these families are experiencing, right? And so once we conducted some focus groups, we had an awakening because they told us, yes, we need culturally responsive parenting education, but I can't give what I don't have. That's what they told us. I can't pour from an empty cup. I have my own trauma, and I want to break this generational cycle that my family is caught up in. But I need help with my trauma. Before I can treat my children the way that they need to be, I've got to heal from my own hurts and my own past, right? So then we had to shift, we had to pivot, right? So yes, we focused on culturally responsive parenting, but we also front-loaded our strategy with mental health supports and education and linking moms to mental health services. So it's important that we amplify the voices of oftentimes the voiceless. And then certainly we want to make sure that we acknowledge the culture of those that we're working with. So, as I mentioned, trauma-informed care is a starting point. But we want to move beyond trauma-informed care to healing-centered engagement. Healing-centered engagement. And this term was coined by Dr. Sean Jenwright. He is a professor of Africana Studies at San Francisco State University. And he had an epiphany, a moment, when he was conducting a group. Normally, he starts with, what's the worst thing that's ever happened to you? That is how he would start his group. Deficits-based, individual-based, right? That's trauma-informed. And then one of the participants said, I am more than the worst thing that's ever happened to me. I have dreams, I have aspirations, I want a better life. And out of that experience, Dr. Jenwright did some research and he came up with this concept of healing-centered engagement. So you all know that when we talk about trauma-informed care, we often talk about what happened to you or what's wrong with you, right? In healing-centered care, it is strengths-based, it is holistic. And so it's about what is right about you. How about that? What are you doing right? You all know how we get in our meetings and we're talking about families and we're going through our case planning and doing our, notes and so forth. And we have our list of what we're going to fix, right? But with healing center engagement, it understands the agency of the individual. It understands the strength and the assets of the individual. It focuses on interpersonal relationships and institutions. And the other unique perspective of healing center engagement is that it focuses on root causes. Oftentimes when we talk about trauma-informed care, we're focused on adverse childhood experiences, being a child of incarcerated parent, or substance use, or living in a home where there's mental illness and so forth. But it's also about the environmental context as well. So racism, classism, sexism, many of the traumas that our families are facing are connected to those issues as well, but we don't oftentimes ask about that. We shy away from those issues, right? But according to Dr. Jen Wright, he says we must face those issues head on. We can't fix what we don't face, am I right? And the last thing that Dr. Jen Wright points out is that providers must support their own health and well-being. Who heals the healer? Who cares for the caregiver? So this is why we're talking about healing-centered organizations, because we can't be out here doing all the work and we're not healed and we're not whole. We have our own past and baggage that we need to unpack. And so this is the light of healing-centered engagement. These are the 5 healing-centered principles for healing-centered engagement. The first one is culture. Learning and having conversations about who we are, our identities, right, in all of its layers. And understanding that we have commonalities. Yes, there's strength in diversity, but there's also strength in leveraging our commonalities as well. It's about agency, supporting the ability to the power to act, to create change, particularly as it relates to social determinants of health. Those things where people live, where they reside, that impact their health outcomes and their well-being. It's also about relationships. Our relationships, how we connect with each other. Neuroscientists say that when we share our stories, that there is actually firing that happens in our brains because of the connections that we make with one another. It's knowing our purpose and our why. When you know your why, you know your way. When you know your why, you know your way. And then finally, it focuses on aspirations or possibilities, the ability to dream and for us to work towards our goals. I want to give you an example of agency from my Hope and Healing group. We had a racial terror incident at the Dollar General store in our neighborhood. And these women and fathers advocated to Dollar General to put healthy foods in their store. Because you all know Dollar Generals don't normally carry fresh fruits and vegetables, okay? And they did it. It was after the racial terror incident, but they stepped up, right? And that was because of the agency and the persistence of the families that lived in that community. That's what we're talking about with root causes, when we actually deal with the root of the issue. Because every time we would meet and have these focus groups and discussions, yes, we would talk about healing and trauma and families and reducing removals and so forth, but they say, I don't have a grocery store in my community. I have to go at least 5 to 10 miles to get to an actual grocery store. So food insecurity came up. So this is what we mean about healing-centered engagement. It is not just focused on the individual pain, but it is also about the social, cultural, and environmental context as well. Amen? So, other aspects of healing-centered engaged organizations. You all know how we have our meetings, and you want to bring up that idea, but you're afraid that maybe you'll be shamed, or maybe your boss may give you a little look for sharing that idea, right? So that's not psychological safety. We want to create psychological safety where it is a team where it's safe to share new ideas, to share, innovative things that you think of in terms of bringing wholeness and wellness to communities. It discourages groupthink. What do we mean by that? It's a psychological phenomena where harmony and conformity, this should sound familiar, is prioritized over critical analysis, over thinking. We just all agree because that's what we're supposed to do, and we miss opportunities for innovation and for change in our communities. So we want to discourage that, and that's a characteristic of healing-centered engaged organizations. We also want to encourage servant behavior. What do I mean by that? Leaders who are comfortable being vulnerable, who are okay with saying, I made a mistake, right? Sometimes that's hard for us to do as influencers and leaders because we want to seem as if we're perfectionists. But then that becomes an issue with our team, and they feel like, oh, I can't ever make a mistake because I'll be shamed in some way. So when we are participants in healing-centered engaged organizations, we have clear expectations, we encourage open communication, we promote inclusion, and we also make sure that it's okay to be vulnerable. That's so important. So as we move towards our healing-centered engaged, because it is an active process, it's not passive, it's important that we keep our main goal at the forefront, which is to alleviate suffering and to elevate joy. That's ultimately what we're doing. When we're participating in healing and health and well-being and promoting goodness and grace, our quest is that folks will experience the best life, their best life, and have better health outcomes. All right, so what do you see here? What is the first thing that you see here? You can just holler it out. I heard somebody said the baby, okay? What else do you see? A couple, I hear that, okay. Does everybody see the baby? Okay, so if you saw the baby first, psychologists say that you are an outcomes person, that you are focused on the big picture, you're a visionary. That if you saw the people, the water, the trees, the other aspects, psychologists say, that you are process-oriented. You're about how do we get to the vision? How do we get to the end, right? We need both in our organizations. We need process-oriented and we need outcomes-oriented. We can't be our best, if we don't have both. But notice that each of us are looking at the same picture, but we all saw something a little different. And so, culture is the lens through which we see the world. It's how we make sense of the world. It's how we understand the world, right? So one of the concepts that's really important, you guys love that picture, huh? I do too. Everybody should have saw the baby, right? This is the Healthy Start group, right? So one of the concepts that's really important for healing-centered organization is this idea of cultural humility. Many of us are familiar with the term cultural competence, and we'll distinguish between the two. But cultural humility says, I am willing to learn, that I am teachable, that I don't know everything there is to know, that I am in a constant process of self-reflection and self-examination. It also means that I fix power imbalances when we're working with families. Are we doing all of the talking, or are we allowing the family to amplify their voice? How are you sharing power with your families? Do they have a voice in decision-making about their own health care? So we're fixing power imbalance. And then finally, there is institutional accountability. We've got to have policies and processes in place to support us being culturally humble. So when we distinguish between cultural competence and cultural humility, oftentimes, we're taught this particular group does this and this particular group does that. Well, no group is a monolith, right? Particularly, I hear this a lot with Hispanic populations or African American populations, when we know that, within those groups, there's interdiversity. So there's no way that we can learn everything there is to know about every group, right? And so that is cultural competence. It is learning facts. It is the acquisition of knowledge. But with cultural humility, I'm going to humble myself and elicit information from the family so that I can understand truly who they are, not based on my assumptions or my beliefs or my past experiences, but because I want to understand the uniqueness of this particular mom, dad, family. And so cultural humility is about love, and it's about compassion and empathy and reducing those negative power imbalances. I know many of you have heard of the term affirmations or microaggressions, which are those subtle, intentional, and even sometimes unintentional interactions that communicate bias towards various groups, right? Micro does not imply that it's not something that's significant. It is significant, particularly if it's happening all the time. It just means that it's not overt oftentimes. But micro-affirmations are those small acts which are often hard to see. They show inclusion, they validate the lived experiences. They don't tell people, oh, that's just in your head, or you're being super sensitive, right? But it's verbal acknowledgement that enables healing and fosters learning. It recognizes the positive contributions that everyone is contributing to the team. It is practicing active and affirmative listening. So affirmations are also an important part of being a healing-centered organization. So I'd like for you to turn to your neighbor, and I'd like for you to share, what does it mean to heal for you? What does it mean to heal for you? And what are some of the coping and healing strategies that you're using for restoration and renewal? Turn and talk. All right, I'm gonna come down on the floor just so that I can get a few responses real quick. Any volunteers to share what healing means for them or some of the strategies? Any volunteers? I have one all the way to the back. Okay, thank you. Awesome. All right, go ahead.
So, speaking
We're
with
listening.
my
Thank
neighbor,
you.
if you can
We're
hear me,
listening.
clap once.
Thank you.
It worked. So, speaking with my neighbor, healing for both of us, we realize means doing nothing. Doing absolutely nothing, just resting. Culturally, we come from a culture where as soon as you open your eyes in the morning, you have to be doing something, and being able to stay still and do nothing and not feel guilty.
All right. I love it. I love it. We live in a hustle culture, right? Where we're constantly engaging with social media and, always expected to answer texts within, a minute or so, right? So to just be, to center, to connect with ourselves, to listen to that inner voice is so important. I call it taking a Sabbath, right? And oftentimes when we talk about rest, it's not just physical rest, but mental rest, social rest. Right? So all of those different types of rest are important. So give her a hand again. Thank you for that. All right, so that's on the micro level, right? On the individual level, what you do for yourself in terms of healing, right? And for me, just to share a little bit about my own journey, I've been on a healing journey. I mentioned that I lost my son to sickle cell disease. And so the grief and lament was real for me. If you can imagine losing your firstborn, he would have been 27 this year. And eventually I became functional, and able to carry out everyday life activities. But there was a period of struggle where I had to get that grief counseling, and I had to draw on my faith community and my spouse, right? And so many of us have experienced different types of losses. It may not have been a loss of a child, maybe it's loss of a job. Oftentimes we're dealing with family members who have lost someone to community violence, so making sure that we tend to the holes in our souls, as I say, the holes in our souls. It's so important as we are working with families that we're also healing ourselves. Because when we touch our hands with love, we begin the process of healing, right? So that's on the micro level. So now let's think about the macro level, organizational strategies. And so we're going to do a poll. We'd like for you to scan the QR code. The question is, what strategies does your organization use to foster resilience and well-being? What strategies does your organization use to foster resilience and well-being? What y'all doing for the people at y'all jobs and organizations and systems? Okay. And if I could see the response screen, please. All right, so we have some responses here. I see wellness activities, retreats, debriefing, wellness week. I love this, reflective supervision, encouraging self-care, team building, encouragement, home visiting, family first. I love that, family first. Wraparound, staff satisfaction survey, counseling, gathering, mental health day, one-on-one time, being vocal, a break from meetings, yes, brave space, good communication. All of these are amazing. Paid time off. Somebody say yes. Martin Health app, resource groups, capacity building and creating a safe and gracious space. Mindful minutes before meetings, work-life balance, meditation. These are all amazing. Thank you all so much. Give yourselves a hand for those. All right, so here are some additional strategies. Some of these were mentioned on our Mentimeter. It's important that we assess, that we conduct surveys so that we can understand our organizational climate and understand what's really happening with our staff. And it's good when it's an anonymous survey so that you can get real data that's, that's not, not truthful, right? It's also an opportunity to assess not only for deficits, but also organizational strengths, relational strengths, and opportunities for growth. These are just some fun things that you can do: connection opportunities, coffee and conversations, courageous conversations, cupcakes and connections, well-being speakers or presentations, ending our minutes 5 minutes early or 10 minutes early, giving people some time back. That's important because oftentimes in this virtual world, we're, on a call, then you're expected to get on the next call, and, you're late because you don't have any grace period. So ending minutes at 25 and 50-minute meetings for transitions and prepared meeting agendas in advance. Motivational Mondays, Tech Tuesdays, even having a tagline in your email that says, you don't have to respond if you receive this or see this after hours. Right? So not, having that expectation to be responsive. And certainly it's important that we have policies and practices in place that support these strategies and behaviors. There is a website called flourishagenda.com that also has some assessment tools that you can use with your organization. Go into a few more that were also on our Mentimeter responses here. Increasing access to employee assistance programs for the team as well as for family members. Complimentary stretch classes, to-go mental health kits, whether it's a stress ball, affirmation card, paid time off, dinner table resilience kits for families. So it's not just supporting the individual within the organization, but also supporting the family as a whole, right? So these are just a few strategies here. Any additional strategies that anybody want to share? All right. So when we have healing-centered organizations, it creates fertile ground for innovation. Innovation, new ideas, different processes, different ways of doing things. And so I just want to share with you some work that we're doing in Northeast Florida with the Northeast Florida Healthy Start Coalition. As you know, our numbers are pretty high, 12 deaths per 1,000 live births for Black babies as compared to 3 deaths per 1,000 live births for white babies, 6 deaths per 1,000 live births for Hispanic babies. And so we are focused on weathering and talking to mothers about toxic stress, the importance of self-care, drawing on community resources, and linking our moms and dads to free mental health services. Free mental health services. And so to date, we've done 11 presentations. We just moved into our second year. This was funded by United Healthcare. We've had over 100 participants, and our locations are community-based with churches, at the Blue Cross Blue Shield retail centers, libraries, at Magnolia Project. We've even partnered with our historically Black college and university, Edward Waters University. We're doing education there as well. And so we're really excited about sharing this information because it is new information for many of our moms, many of our families. And we're talking about toxic stress because almost 40% of Black mothers and birthing mothers experience maternal mental health conditions. Compared to white women, Black women are twice as likely to experience maternal mental health conditions, but half as likely to receive treatment. Right? So in our sessions, we're saying it's okay not to be okay, but we're also saying that there is strength in asking for help. Because in our culture, and I say our, the African American community, strength is not telling folks your business. It's just pushing through. It's just praying your way through. And so this whole idea of sharing your business out with practitioners and therapists is a no-no. But we're saying it's okay to unpack the trauma and the past history that you've had, or some of the challenges that you may be currently facing. Black women are one of the most undertreated groups for depression in the United States, and Black women experience maternal mortality rates 3 to 4 times the rate of white women. And we also know that weathering is not just about stress, but it's also about racism, classism, to the point where our cells seem like they're older than what they really are. And so we're talking about cortisol, and we're talking about the impact of cortisol on the body and the baby. We're also finding out what their challenges are in terms of social determinants of health. I mentioned food insecurity. And our community is not just highlighting the issue, they're coming up with innovative solutions. And I'll share one of the solutions with you. I mentioned that there is no grocery store within a 5-mile radius of this particular community, Hope and Healing Circles. And so UF Health Jacksonville, right there on 8th Street, has started a food pharmacy in the hospital. So physicians are not just writing prescriptions for meds, they're also writing prescriptions for healthy foods. They go downstairs, they go to the market, and they get foods. It was funded, yes, by the hospital, but also a partnership with Blue Cross Blue Shield. So that collaboration is so important. The second thing that we've done in our community is we have a farmer's market. There's not a grocery store, but across the viaduct, as we call it, there is there's a farmer's market. But that farmer's market did not accept EBT, food assistance programs. Now they accept food assistance programs. And it took a lot of advocacy from public health advocates, from the city of Jacksonville, from our health department, and so forth, to reduce and deal with the food apartheid that exists in our community. So it's not about just talking about the problem. We talk about it. We know the disparities. We know the inequities. What are we going to do about it? What are we going to do about it? Where is the innovation? We can only have innovation if we're in healthy, healing organizations where we can share these ideas and so forth. With social determinants of health, we know it's not just about food insecurity, it's also about feeling safe in your community. It's about the physical built environment of the community. Are there sidewalks? Is the community walkable? We tell folks they need to be healthy and to walk, but is there even a sidewalk? Right? So what do we do about that? That's an advocacy issue with our city. And so that's one thing that our group has focused on, is advocating with our city council representatives that we elect to make sure that they have sidewalks and lighting in their community, right? So yes, we're about, making sure that, 5 minutes, okay. Making sure that, we are addressing things that directly impact mom, but it's also about what's happening in the community as well. All right, so we've talked about cortisol, and when mom experiences maternal stress and toxic stress, there is release of cortisol. It goes across the placenta to the baby, causing developmental issues. And so one of the things that we also focus on is this balance of stressors with supports and strengths. And so it's important that we have a network that we can rely on when we're going through difficult situations. So not only do we have, professionals going out in the community to educate, women who participate in our sessions become facilitators. So there's a trainer, not for other professionals, but a trainer for the women. And we pay them to go out in the community and to educate about these issues. So they're in their public housing complex where they have relationships and where they know the folks in their community, and they present. And it's been going really well. And you can see that they bring their babies with them. We're very family friendly. And so we've done several presentations within communities. We're also addressing the educational pipeline, right? We're training nurses, physicians. We have residency programs at UF Health Jacksonville, and so we also take this information to the professionals as well, so that they are aware, and they're referring to Northeast Florida Healthy Start Coalition, Magnolia Project, and to our weathering presentations. So I'd like to cut across the field, as we say, and I want us to go back to that self-reflection. Healers practice active reflection. And so these are just a few questions. I'm not going to go through all of them because you have these questions in your packet. But these are some of the questions that you should ask yourself in terms of being a healing-centered healer. What are the sources of your beliefs and values and customs? Are you aware of your biases and prejudices? And if so, how are you dealing with them? What type of exposure did you have to other cultures when you were growing up? And do you give your colleagues, youth, families equitable consideration regardless of their socioeconomic status, their cultural or ethnic background? We have to sit with that. Right? I want you to take this with you. It's our respect mnemonic. The R is for rapport and engagement, rapport building and engagement. The E is for empowerment through voice amplification, building strong connections and trust and shared understanding. Supportive networks, policy development. That's long-term sustainable change when we address policies. Effective and culturally responsive and compassionate service delivery. Creating trust. And going beyond trauma-informed care to what? Healing-centered engagement, all right?
Just a little bit. R-E-S-P-E-C-T, find out what it means to me. R-E-S-P-E-C-T, T-F-T-C-T. Sock it to me, sock it to me, sock it to me, in a rich way. Sock it to me, sock it to me, sock it to me. Woo! Hey! A little bit, in a rich way. Just a little bit. I get tired. Just a little bit. Keep on trying. Just a little bit. You're running out of food. Just a little bit. And I ain't lying. Just a little bit. Respect.
All right, all right, all right. So I know you all won't forget your respect. What questions do you have for me? I want to thank you so much for the time this evening. This has been an amazing, amazing conference. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you. What questions do you have? Yes, Shay.
Have you found, thank you, no, you're good. What sort of challenges have you found implementing healing engaged work, just specifically in your area? And can you tell me a little bit more about where you're from in terms of if it's more urban, suburban, or metro?
So I'm based in Jacksonville, Florida, which is an urban city. And in terms of healing-centered engagement, one of the things that I find really challenging is that providers kind of want to stay on the surface when it comes to trauma. They want to, they deal with the ACEs and PACEs, positive experiences as well. But when it comes to dealing with things like historical trauma or collective trauma or racism, like things that people are experiencing right now, every day, all day, on the news, in the media, stereotyping, right? We don't really address that as trauma. And so there are cultural assessments that include those layers. And so I really think it's important for agencies to go deeper and to step outside of what's comfortable and what we've traditionally been trained in, and really address some of these systemic issues that we have in our community. Other questions? All right. There's some resources and references. Here's my contact information. If you'd like more information, we do trainings. We'll come to you and talk about cultural assessments, organizational assessments, training around racial stress and trauma, authentic community engagement, and so forth. Those are really our core areas in terms of training consulting. And we're also doing some research around telemedicine use and spirituality and survivorship. So it's been my pleasure. I wish you well, and remember, respect.